The thing I like best about Mank, it really made me want to drink. Cheers. Mank is the 11th film of one of the most acclaimed directors of recent years and one of my own personal favourites, David Fincher. It was written by his late father, Jack Fincher, from a script penned in the 90s. And it stars Gary Oldman, Lily Collins, Amanda Seyfried and Charles Dance. Herman J. Mankiewicz races to finish the script to Orson Welles' Citizen Kane whilst battling the bottle and memories of the corrupt and unethical Hollywood and political systems of the 1930s. Welcome back to the channel and to my movie review of David Fincher's Mank. I'm a huge fan of David Fincher. I at least like all of his films, yes, even Alien 3. And he's made a career out of making technically impressive feasts for your eyes. But he's not just a visual director. He's always understood how to tell dramatic and exciting stories in a way which is always engaging. Now, I have seen Citizen Kane, but probably not for at least 20 years. I studied film at university and obviously Citizen Kane is pretty much obligatory in any film class. I don't recall loving it. I seem to remember appreciating it at a technical level, but the story left me cold and often bored. So when I heard that Fincher was directing a film about the writer of Citizen Kane, I had mixed feelings. Kind of a, ooh, It almost goes without saying, but Mank is an incredible looking film. I mean, it's almost like they're showing off at times. It's that good. Mank was apparently filmed with an 8K monochrome camera, and then effects were added later to make the film look a little less sharp, as if it were made in the 1930s. There are also lots of little touches and stylish flourishes to make the film authentic to its time. There are all the transition types of the 30s, like the long fades. There's a dreamy montage scene where the screen's really busy, lots going on. There are even the little circles that pop up in the top right to indicate the change of the reels.
In the industry, we call them cigarette burns.
The sound of Mank is also very authentic to its time. The film has a monaural soundtrack, which means that everything was recorded on the same track, not like with modern films where the voice and the music and the effects are on different tracks to give depth. And this gives some scenes a kind of stagey vibe, as if you're watching a theatre play. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, who have now provided the soundtrack to 4 of David Fincher's films, create the music for Mank, and again it's very authentic to its time. It has that authentic, speakeasy, cocktail bar, jazzy vibe which you associate with America from the 1930s. So performance-wise, Mank is flawless, I would say. Gary Oldman is utterly believable as Herman J. Mankiewicz. He makes him sympathetic and aggravating in equal measure, even if sometimes the story doesn't back him up. It's one of Oldman's more showy roles of late, although it never once feels over the top. Amanda Seyfried is really great as Marion Davies. Davies was an actress in the 1920s and 30s, and Seyfried gets to play her acting in her role. You can see she's pretending to be part of something where she's often overlooked and not taken seriously. It feels like a really lived-in performance, and I had a great deal of empathy and sympathy for the character. Charles Dance makes William Randolph Hearst, the inspiration of Citizen Kane's Charles Foster Kane, effortlessly intimidating. And this is what Dance does best. Hearst is the biggest presence in the room, even if he doesn't say very much. And I would have really liked to have learned more about this man, but more about that later. To round off the performances, Lily Collins as Mank's assistant, Tom Pelphrey, hot off a great turn in the most recent series of Ozark as Mank's brother Joe, Tuppence Middleton as Mank's wife, and Tom Burke absolutely nailing the sound and look of Orson Welles are all absolutely fantastic support. Mank also has a beautifully written script. At times it can meander and story isn't often its focus, but it's always really engaging and just wonderfully written. There are a few really long scenes where, in all honesty, nothing much was actually happening, but I took great pleasure in just listening to these words coming out of these incredible actors' mouths. It seems to me that Mank is one of the most divisive and polarising films of 2020. Although it seems to be generally fairly well received, everyone seems to have a different take on what they like and what they don't like about the film. So what were your thoughts? What worked best for you and whose was the standout performance? What didn't you like about Mank? Let me know in the comments below. So although I loved a huge amount of Mank, there are certain things I wasn't so keen on. One of the most common aspects which is cropping up in the negative reviews of Mank is its story. And I would totally agree that the general story is not always particularly interesting or engaging. I would have liked to have learned a lot more about Mank himself. We see him as he's writing Citizen Kane and we flash back to see what brought him to this place, but we don't really learn that much about him. He doesn't seem to be particularly different in 1940 as he was in 1930. I also really want to know a lot more about William Randolph Hearst and why Mank had such an issue with him. It's touched upon in the film, but I would have liked a lot more. Mank also spends a lot of time on the politics and the Hollywood system of the 1930s, and it treats the viewer as if they already know all about this era. It doesn't really explain who a lot of these people are, what they're doing, what they want. It really sort of leaves you in the cold. And there were quite a few moments where I didn't wholly understand who certain people were or what their point was in the story. I mentioned earlier on that the soundtrack is very authentic to the time, but considering the past work of Reznor and Ross on Fincher's other films, I would have liked something just a bit more edgy, a bit more original. It's really well done, but it just seems a bit generic and safe. In summary, Mank is a beautifully designed and made movie. The performances all round are totally believable and absorbing. And even when the story sagged, I was often totally captivated by the beautiful script and the way these actors delivered it. And though I can't rank it amongst Fincher's top echelon of work, I enjoyed it much more than I expected. And I enjoyed it more than Citizen Kane. My score for Mank is 8.5 out of 10. Thanks for watching.
Game over, man. It's game over.